What if I'm a liar? Well, this comes up because one of the most problematic survival techniques that people who are especially in long-term narcissistic relationships find themselves falling into or turning to is that they start to feel that they're becoming liars and actually start to feel that they're actually becoming good at being liars. Have you ever felt like that? If so, drop it in the comments. But let's break that down. So here are a few scenarios. So one woman had actually told me that she was lying. She would lie to her husband, her narcissistic husband, regularly, or as often she could get away with it, about one of her grandchildren being sick because the grandchildren live some distance away. And she did that so she could spend a few more days visiting with them because if they were sick, he was actually fine with her staying. But otherwise, he would pester her to come home and take care of him and why she left him alone. Another person's story was that this person had told me that she would lie about meeting a friend, like an old friend, for coffee during the workday. Her husband's narrative about her, narcissistic husband's narrative, was that she was lazy and her job wasn't hard and she's a spoiled brat and she does what she wants and she was immature because she wanted to have time with her friends. And he actually would often sort of ruin her time with her friends or attempt to isolate her from her friends by just making it difficult for her to see them, for them to come over, whatever. So this gal, she would go out for coffee in the middle of the workday when he wasn't with her, and she would never tell him that she would go see one of her friends and have the coffee with them, and that would be her way to see them. Another story I was told, it's an interesting one. Someone told me that she liked a certain kind of snack, right, that she got at a more specialty food store that was a little more expensive. Now, her and her partner shared a lot of costs. They both worked, housing costs, all of that. And he would absolutely pitch a fit that she would purchase this expensive snack. He
had his own expensive taste, by the way. So she would buy it separately, throw the receipt out, pay for it herself, and hide it. A woman who said her vulnerable narcissistic mother, here's another one, the vulnerable narcissistic mother, insisted on only serving pumpkin pie at a holiday dinner a couple times a year, and most people in the family did not like pumpkin pie. So one year, this woman I was talking to, the daughter, told her mother she was going to take charge of dessert and said, "I'll get the pie from the place," and claimed that the store, that the only one that mother would allow them to get the pie from, claimed that the store had run out of pies before she could order one. She's so sorry. She's so sorry. So then the person got the pumpkin pie she wanted all along. She lied to her mother about that. They had plenty of those pumpkin pies. These people are lying. They're lying about the pie availability. They're lying about the snack purchase. They're lying about the friend meetup. They're lying about the sick grandchild. Listen, narcissistic people lie a lot too. So these folks who are lying to have a moment in their lives within this relationship to care for themselves, to do something that mattered to them, to eat something that just gave them a little bit of pleasure. To do that, they had to lie. Now, a lot of these are lies or sins of omission, if you will. They leave out a piece of information. They don't say, "I bought the snack." And some are lies of commission, intentionally setting it up as a lie. The grandkids are sick. But yep, by the definition of lie, these are lies. Let's call it what it is. I have been doing this work, like I said, for a long, long time. And for folks who can't readily get out of all of these relationships, once radical acceptance sets in, you can really see what it is, and you can't unsee it. And you recognize that all of the communicating in the world is not helping, you're going to have to find new workarounds to get around the limitations of the relationship. Listen, this isn't a philosophical discussion about lying. This is not an ethics course. Would getting chocolate macadamia nuts from a fancy gourmet store qualify as a relationship betrayal? I personally don't think so, but it could be called by a purist a lack of honesty. And I'm sure there is some rigid couples therapist out there who would view this as an honesty problem in the relationship. I personally view it as survival. The narcissistic relationship has no hope of being healthy. These little workarounds, though, getting the nuts you want, a day with grandkids, mean that you have to be dishonest because honesty would result in such exhausting chaos and insults and criticisms and haranguing that lying about a 30-minute cup of coffee with a friend feels a lot easier than listening to 30 minutes of insults about it. Listen, folks don't love, and I'm guilty of this, guilty as charged, but none of us love that these lies come easier to us over time. you may learn what kinds of lies are needed when they're needed based on what the issues in the relationship are. And you get used to lying about it because it actually makes life a little bit more tolerable. Lying about working late so you can run an errand that you need to run and aren't called selfish for taking the extra time on your way home or doing something you need. The lying becomes more fluid the more you do it. And if you are ordinarily temperamentally an honest person, it doesn't sit right. And you hate that this is what this relationship requires in the process of not trying to abandon yourself to actually do something that's good for you, to see a person who is a support. You may still feel like you're abandoning yourself lying when you aren't naturally a liar. Now, the other challenge raised by what I'm going to call survival lying, I'm sure the ethicists would have a field day with me, but the other challenge raised by the survival lying is that the person doing the lying does sometimes start to feel worse about themselves, which, if you were not careful, could nudge you back a little bit into trauma bond territory. I'm as bad as them, I'm a liar too. Frankly, I have yet to see the person who is stuck and can't readily, easily get out of a narcissistic relationship who doesn't lie to keep themselves from being fully, totally silenced, abandoned, and imprisoned in the relationship. For you, an hour at the gym may require a complex lie just to avoid being told you're selfish, for taking time for yourself. And that doesn't even account for the hypocrisy whereby the narcissistic person can take all the damn gym hours that they want. Where this can get messed up further are the holy roller self-righteous enablers in your midst, who may actually take some sort of holier-than-thou stance of all lying as a sin or some such nonsense. However, those enablers, they pack a punch, and it can lead to self-shame. My guess is that holy roller in your life may have a little bit of a self-righteous narcissist sprinkle on top, or just be one hell of a muscled-up enabler. So what do we do? Okay,
For all of us liars out there, it's a balancing act. Step one is you have to be clear, radically accept and be aware on the patterns in your relationship to be clear that they are not going to change and that it is not you. And also be clear with yourself on your reasons for why you cannot get out. This is all about clarity and agency. And you can't say, because I hope it's going to change, because it's not. Step two is to check in with yourself about how you use these lies. Now, yes, I get that this can get into a sort of a recursive loop of rationalizing your own deceit. But really, is this lie getting you something that otherwise it would be impossible to get? Social support, giving you a little break you need, giving you a small experience. You really wanted the damn macadamia nuts, or a cup of coffee with a friend. And are these things that if you communicated them about clearly in the narcissistic relationship that you would not be able to get to participate in with all sorts of rage, control, accusations, and gaslighted nonsense? Most of you already know the answer to that question in your relationship, but think about it. Step three, keep an eye on the lying. Listen, we don't want our lying to become sort of our go-to everywhere. We don't want it to be a slippery slope. Now, there's a risk we could use it as an easy out even with a healthier person where communication, open communication, could be an option. For example, like I said, we might have a healthy friendship. We don't want to start going down that lying rabbit hole with folks where it's not part of what's needed. Don't lose the lie unless, honestly, it's somehow supporting your sanity and psychological safety within the relationship. The lie is almost like having a dangerous tool in your garage. Like, you're not going to use an axe to cut a lemon. An axe is very useful to split logs, but it is not meant to be a paring knife. The lie may be a way to get support in a certain way, but it shouldn't become a chronic go-to in all areas of your life. The challenge with these narcissistic relationships that we cannot easily or readily leave is that we don't have this available spectrum of healthy relationship tools to draw from. We can't do all the stuff like communicate and make our needs known directly or ask directly or share a feeling or be ourselves without it devolving into mountains of manipulation, invalidation, anger, accusations that we are selfish or needy or gaslighting, any of it. Listen, self-abandonment becomes a very reflexive go-to in these relationships for a long time, but in the long term, it is absolutely terrible for both our physical and mental health. But when you cannot fully exit one of these relationships, and you do not, which most of us don't, when you don't have the bandwidth or the nervous system capacity for their attacks, and you don't want to keep self-abandoning, and you do occasionally want to get a need met, yeah, lying often becomes needed. Now, sadly, the lies become a way to ensure that much-needed things can happen without as much harmful, exhausting friction. And I gotta tell you, it's tricky when we get caught in one of these lies, right? Things like, oh, that lady with the coffee. John said he saw you with Mary getting coffee today. Why didn't you say anything? Or that mom could say, I called the pie shop and they said they had plenty of pumpkin pies. or if the little grandkid comes on the FaceTime with grandpa looking like $1,000,000, then it upholds one more piece of the narrative that the narcissistic person holds.